Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, and welcome to today's part in the Irish history. As this is Irish History Month, today we're going to look at the Bodhrán, and that is aka the Celtic Round drum. So sit back, relax, smash that subscribe button, and enjoy a horn of mead by the fire. And let's quickly get into the Bodhrán. Now, I just want to make this clear off the top. Even though the Bodhrán is round and made with animal skin on the top, it is not a Native American round drum. They're played totally different styles. They also, on the insides, look different as well. They're played with a different stick. The Bodhrán is played with a tipper, whereas the Native American is played with a single-ended stick. So, bearing that, let's get into the Irish Bodhrán. The Bodhrán in Irish, or plural, is a frame drum. Basically what that means is it's a wood frame with a goat skin on top of it. And it's used in Irish music, it ranges usually from 25 centimeters to 65 centimeters in diameter, which is 10 to 26 inches. With most drums measuring about 35 to 45 centimeters, the 14 to 18 inches range. Each size will give you a different tone and a different quality. The sides of the drum are 9 to 20 centimeters, 3.5 to 8 inches deep, and this drum is covered in goat skin. That's another telltale sign that this is a different style round drum, as the Irish had lots of goats, so they used tanned goat skin hide for the top of the drum, also known as the head. And the head is tacked to one side. And synthetic heads, I don't like synthetic heads. I prefer to use the real ones. They have a different tone quality and, in my mind, suck balls. The other side is open-ended for one hand to be pressed against the inside of the drum head to control the pitch and timbre. In other words, you put your hand, there's two cross members, you put your hand inside and you push against it, and as you're using the tipper, you can change the quality of the sound that way. One or two of the crossbars, sometimes removable, may be inside the frame, but this is increasingly rare on modern instruments. Yes and no, depending on the drum, depending who's making it. My particular one, I do have. It has the double bar on the inside. It basically more makes like a cross, like the Vorgus cross. And unlike traditional ones, because I play in a band and we play outside a lot, I use a tunable bodhrán. The difference between tunable and regular is the tunable on the inside have little screws that will tighten the head, and it'll keep the head at that tightness, whereas the other one, humidity, heat, does affect the tone quality, makes the skins loose and tight. What I found and why I switched was that I had to go to that one for when I did concerts outside. As you know, I'm part of the band Raven's Call. I switched because outside, especially in humid weather or really hot weather, the sound I just couldn't keep consistent for the songs, so it was just easier for me to get the tunable. I remember many a concert where I was outside around a fire and I'd end up having to heat up the bodhrán over the fire to tighten back up the head, because the atmosphere got way too, way too loose. So that's a bit about that. One or two crossbars, sometimes removable, maybe inside the frame. Some professional modern bodhráns integrate mechanical tuning systems, like I was mentioning, similar to those used on drums found on drum kits. like I was mentioning. And yes, you do use a hex key that tighten and remove the skin and loosening. Now, let's get into the history of this amazing drum, okay? Shonorada declared that the bodhrán to be the native drum of the ancient Irish Celts, as did the bodhrán maker Patrick McNally, suggesting that it was possibly used originally for renewing or wool drying, with the musical history that predated Christianity, native to the southwest of Ireland. However, according to musician Ron Nolan, former editor of Irish Music Magazine, the bodhrán evolved in the mid-19th century from the tambourine, which can be heard in some Irish music recordings dating back to the 1920s and viewed in pre-famine painting. However, in remote parts of the southwest, the poor man's tambourine, made from farm implements without cymbals, was in popular use among murmurs, or wren boys. Now, the murmur is like the folk music, another name for Irish folk music, and it's basically the people that sang it were known as murmurs. A large oil painting on canvas from 1833, we'll say, by Daniel MacLeish, he lived from 1806 to 1870, depicts a large Halloween house party in which a tambourine-style bodhrán features clearly. It is in a group of musicians with union pipes, a fiddle, and a fife. The bodhrán is struck with the back of the player's hand. So you can either tap the bodhrán and play it with a hand or with a tipper, and the tipper is wood that has a double end. And this is also known as the kippen. In the early 20th century, homemade frame drums were constructed using willow branches as frames, leather drum heads, and pennies as jingles. Photographs in the 1940s and videos from the 1950s show bodhráns with jingles played with a chippen. Now let's look at the name bodhrán and what it means. The Irish word bodhrán, or indicating a drum. So it really means a drum. It is first mentioned in a translated English document in the 17th century. It appears in Jacob Poole's list of words from the baronies of Froth and Bargy in County Wexford, collected in about the 18th century, meaning a drum, trampoline, also sieve using a winning corn. Third generation bodhrán maker Carmel Tomlin suggests that the name bodhrán means skin tray. He also suggests a link with the Irish word bodhэр, meaning, among other things, a drum or dull sound. It also means deaf. A relatively new introduction into Irish music, the bodhrán without jingles has largely supplemented as a percussion instrument. It was also used in war. The bodhrán is one of the most basic drums, and as such it is similar to the frame drums distributed widely across North Africa and the Middle East and in Native American music. It contends with the use of Arabic music and musical traditions of the Mediterranean region. A larger form is found in the Iranian, which is played with the fingers in an upright position without a stick. Now, traditional skin drums made by some Native Americans are very close in design to the bodhrán as well. But the big difference is that the bodhrán would have the sticks or no sticks, and the Native Americans would have sinew holding the hide down, and the hide on the bodhrán is tacked, whereas the Native Americans, like I said, is tied down. It has also been suggested that the origin of the instrument may have been skin trays used in Ireland for carrying peat. In the earliest bodhrán may have simply been a skin stretched across a wood frame without any means of attachment. The Cornish frame drum, Carl du Carran, which is used for harvesting grain, was known as early as 1880. Peter Kenny observed similar instrument in Drost and Wiltshire in 1950s, where it is known as the riddle drum, a riddle being a large sieve and separating soil products from stones. Dorothea Hash has stated that until the mid-20th century, the bodhrán was mainly used as a tray for separating chaff and baking, as a food server or sorting food or tools. She argues that the use of a musical instrument was restricted to ritual use in rural areas. She claims that while the earliest evidence of it beyond ritual occurs in about 1842, its use as a general instrument did not become widespread until 1960s when Shinorada used it. Now, that does make sense because if you know anything about the ancient Irish, they tended to use everything for more than once. So they'd use the simple knife, both in magical workings to cut their harvest, to slaughter their animals, to skin them, to eat their meat on a daily basis. So this makes sense that they'd make an instrument not just for instrument, but for other purposes as well. Now, let's look at the popularity. There's no known references to this particular name for a drum prior to the 17th century, although various drums played with either hands or sticks have been used in Ireland since ancient times. So the name is relatively new, but the drum itself is very old. The bodhrán itself did not gain wide recognition as a legitimate musical instrument until Irish traditional music resurgence in about 1960, in which it became known through the music of Sean-O'Rada and others. The second wave, roots of revival, of Irish traditional music in the 1960s and 1970s brought virtuoso bodhrán playing to the forefront, where it was forever popularized by bands as Charo Conna, the Chieftains. Growing interest led to the international available LP recordings, in which time bodhrán became globally recognized instrument. In the 1970s, virtual players such as the Boys of Lou, Robin Morn, the Chieftains, Peter Mercer, Plansky, Chelsea Moore, and the Dunnans' Johnny Ringo McCaw further developed playing techniques. There's also many other bands that use it, including the Celtic Women, so there's lots. Even my band, I use it quite a bit in my playing. Now, international use. Although most common in Ireland, the bodhrán has gained popularity throughout Celtic music that includes the 7 Celtic cultures, especially in Scotland, Cape Breton, North Mainland, Nova Scotia, Newfoundland, and PEI. In southern England, tambourines were popular accompaniment to traditional dance music. In the southwest of England, a similar instrument played from the frame of a garden sieve was once popular and known as the riddle drum. In Cornish traditional music, they are called a cowardly caran. The use of this instrument to store odds and ends led to the name being used to mean malicious. The bodhrán is also found application within Celtic music of Gaeltica, often accompanied by the Girtad Gelga or Galatian bagpipes. I will be doing probably tomorrow or the next day on the Irish bagpipes. Now, let's look at what you can use to play the bodhrán with. It is generally played with a hand or what's called either a tipper, beater, stick, or chippin. Tippers were originally fashioned from a double-ended knuckle bone, but now more commonly been made from ash, holly, or hickory. Birch-ended beaters and rim shot striking the rim technique is, for contrast, were introduced by Johnny McDowell. Also, you can get and use kind of like what they do in snare drums with the brushes that have like a fan. You can also use different sizes, and each does give a different sound. It's up to the player which size works for them the best. Now, The bodhrán, let's get some. This is what a bodhrán typically sounds like while being played. And that technique is using the rim to do rim shots. And as you can tell just from that, it is a very versatile instrument that you can get great differences and fun with. The drum, it is usually played in a seated position, held vertically on the player's thigh and supported by their upper body and arm, usually on the left side for right-handed player. Now, when I'm doing it, I tend to stand up, but I brace one half back of my hand against the bars so that it doesn't fall. So you can do both ways, but easier, yeah, sitting down. But they even now have harnesses where you can actually attach a harness to the drum itself. And as you're sitting down, you place your hand placed on the inside of the skin where it is able to control the tension and therefore the pitch and timbre. By applying various amounts of pressure, it's also the amount of surface area being played, with the back of the hand against the crossbar if present. The drum is struck with the other arm, usually the right, and is played either with a bare hand or with a tipper. There are numerous playing styles, mostly named after a region of Ireland in which they originated. The most common is Kerry style, which uses a two-headed tipper. The West Limerick style uses only one end of the tipper. I tend to do the more Kerry style. Later players such as Robbie Bernchach, Tommy Hayes, Aidan Scobie MacDonald, Ab Bodhrán, and Damien Quinn developed sophisticated pitch varying techniques which allowed players to follow the tune being played. This was the birth of the top end style. Their breakthrough in this style has achieved local and international acclaim, with many beginners now being educated in this manner. This top end style is often played similar on a smaller 14 to 15 inch and deeper 5 to 6 inch drum with a thinner resonant skin. Prepared like the skin of the bodhrán drum, the tipper in this style is usually straight, and in the most expressive action is forced on the top end of the drum. The concept evolved, allowing a greater versus lesser amount of skin to resonate, with the skin hand acting as a moving bearing edge. Top end players move the skin hand from the bottom towards the top of the drum to generally increasingly high pitches by making a C shape with the skin hand. I also do that style. It all depends which style I use, depends on the song. The player can help enhance even amplify the sound. The same concept can be employed while playing at the front of the drum, the skin hand moving towards and away from the player, or the bottom end style, which is essentially top end but, upside down, with the majority of the tipper strikes at the bottom of the head. In any of these styles, crossbars are most often absent, allowing a more unrestricted access for the hand to move and modify the tone. This enables a more melodic approach to this rhythm instrument, with a wide range of tones being employed. While playing the bodhrán as an accompaniment to Irish music, different beats may be used. For example, reels tend to have 4/4 time. The bodhrán player must stick to this rhythm, but is free to improvise within the structure. Most simply, they can enunciate the first beat of 4, making a sound like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But they can syncopate, putting double pulses according to the rhythmic characteristics of the tunes being played. This difference between sensitive and insensitive playing a matter of much concern to other traditional musicians. Because the bodhrán typically plays 16th notes, carry style, a great deal of variety can be introduced by these syncopations and the use of rests. Combined with manual pitch changes and naturally occurring tonal vibrations in an animal's drumhead, the bodhrán can almost sound as melodic and expressive as other non-percussive instruments. Now, let's look at the new techniques that have evolved over time. Playing styles have all been affected by the introduction of the internal tone ring, driven against the skin to tension and loosen screws. In other words, a self-tuning. This was invented by Seamus O'Kane from Dugalvin County in Londonderry, Northern Ireland. To combat the damp conditions of Dogal in 1975, the system was copied, refined by its makers, that it caught on. This system is now being used by makers from many diverse cultures worldwide. It has revolutionized the making and playing of the bodhráns by removing the threat of atmospheric conditions to the tension of the drumhead. The accepted philosophy of thick skins was that challenged also at this time by O'Kane's introduction of thin Lernerberg skins, this allowing the bodhrán to achieve both higher and lower crisp notes and allowing players to become more musically delicate in their playing. Some of the more modern modifications are: it is currently not unusual for the rim of the bodhrán to be covered with electrical tape, either by the drum maker or the owner. This both reduces edge loading, where the vibrations in the skin hit the rim and bounce back toward the center of the drum, and dampens unwanted overtones. I personally like the overtones, so I don't do this, allowing for greater control of the drum's sound. Electrical tape is preferred because of the adhesive is a rubber-based and will stretch with the skin even after bonding to it, lessening the likelihood of bubbles and other changes in the tape occurring when the skin tension is changing and by tuning in the atmospheric conditions. Owners of lower quality drums with thick and rough skins may also choose to sand the skin very lightly to reduce the rasp when the tipper strikes the face of the drum. Many effects of these and other modifications to the drum skin, especially high quality skins, can also achieve through the regular use of the drum over time.